Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte, Wednesday, August 17th, 1661. In a few hours, the owner of the place, Nicolas Fouquet, the powerful superintendent general of the kingdom's finances, will receive the king and his court for a sumptuous celebration. 600 courtiers are expected at the chateau for a banquet that is meant to make history. In the kitchens, one man leads a team of master chefs and servants. His name, François Vatel. He has been preparing these festivities for several months, and just a few hours before the start, the tension is palpable.
Vatel is on all fronts before this famous celebration on the 17th of August. He is everywhere at once. He is the grand organizer of the festivities. He checks in the kitchens that the provisions are there, that the dishes are simmering, that the rotisseries are turning, that everyone is at work.
He is everywhere, absolutely everywhere. He adjusts a bouquet, oversees the arrangement of a fruit basket that must adorn the king's table, and makes the silverware shine like a full moon. Everything must run smoothly. Everything must be absolutely perfect. They serve Nicolas Fouquet, but above all, they serve the King of France and the court and all the distinguished guests who, in a few hours, in a few minutes, will be present.
Vatel knows that tonight, his reputation is at stake, and that the slightest misstep could have irreversible consequences. But at this precise moment, he also savors the responsibility that is his to serve the sovereign and his court. So, he reflects on the journey he has taken and on that child who was not destined for such a future.
We don't know much about the childhood and youth of François Vatel. We know he was from Picardy, from a small village called Allen. His father was a ploughman and his mother was named Michel Caudel. But that's about all we know.
On the other hand, I think he is very clear on this point. Little François does not want to take over his father's farm. However, we know that François has a godfather and that this godfather already works in a so-called food profession.
He must have undoubtedly gone through a sort of cursus honorum, started as a carver or service valet, and then gradually climbed the ranks of domestic service.
What is absolutely fascinating is that this young man finds himself in the service of Nicolas Fouquet, who just after the king is certainly the second most important person in the kingdom. How? It's a mystery.
It is known that one of his relatives worked for Fouquet. It is Antoine Vatel, who is a master paver, so he takes care of the paving, notably of the Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte. Perhaps he is the one who introduced Vatel to Fouquet. It is quite nebulous. In any case, in 1656, he is in the service of one of the most powerful men in the Kingdom of France.
In the mid-17th century, Nicolas Fouquet is leading an ambitious project, the construction of a chateau that he wants to match his rank and fortune. About 20 kilometers from the royal residence of Fontainebleau, the Château of Vaux-le-Vicomte is beginning to take shape. More than 360 years after the laying of the first stone, this masterpiece of classical architecture is still today one of the most important private properties in France.
Welcome to Vaux-le-Vicomte. We are here in the heart of the garden, facing the chateau. You see, the chateau is 70 meters wide and 30 meters high, so it is both majestic and spectacular, but at the same time human-sized, and you don't feel lost or overwhelmed. Fouquet already has another castle, the Château de Saint-Mandé. He has private mansions in Paris. He has many properties, but his status is rising socially and professionally, and he needs something bigger that matches his new social and professional status. He calls upon three artists already well known in their time: the architect Levaux, the landscaper Lenotre, and the decorator painter Lebrun. When you get a little closer, you see above the windows, the bas-reliefs show two lions and between their paws, an emblem that represents a squirrel. The squirrel is the emblem of Fouquet, since the family is originally from Poitou. And Fouquet, in Poitevin, means squirrel.
Vaux-le-Vicomte is somewhat the architectural gem of its time. When Fouquet builds this chateau, he truly wants to create an architectural object that is one of the most beautiful things created in his era. It's a castle that is truly at the centre of French formal gardens. There are magnificent salons. So everything is conceived as a whole.
We are here in the large oval salon. It is the centerpiece of the chateau. It is 18 meters long, 18 meters high. But in France, no building of this size had rooms of this dimension. This grand salon is at the center of the chateau, at the intersection of the two main axes, the north-south axis that connects the courtyards and the garden, and the east-west axis that connects the apartments, Fouquet's apartment and the king's apartment. It is an extremely spectacular place.
Vatel is about 20 years old when he arrives at Vaux-le-Vicomte for the first time, and it is in the stables that he is first assigned. But the young man wants more, and likes it here. He did everything to get noticed and become indispensable.
Let's imagine the phenomenal culture shock between this young countryside boy, born in this farming environment, and the incredible splendors he discovers. And now it's time for him to learn, of course, to be aware, to be informed, and to know, I would say, to anticipate the demand.
He is a boy of exceptional intelligence with a remarkable mind, an excellent organizer. That, I believe, is the main point. Inventive, almost guessing his master's intentions, anticipating them.
After a few years, François Vatel becomes the castle's butler. It is a key position in a chateau like Fouquet's, because he is somewhat the master's trusted man, but he is the one who takes care of the backstage management, so to speak. This means he has a budget, very concretely, that he can manage to buy items that will be used for the chateau.
Nicolas Fouquet trusts Vatel, and it is only natural that he also entrusts him with the strategic position of managing the chateau's festivities.
He takes care of the grand dinners, organized by Fouquet. It's something essential for Fouquet, since he is not only a minister but a sort of broker who is in contact with a clientele of financiers. One must have an open table, one must entertain.
The banquet is truly a central moment in the Ancien Régime. It is a moment of sharing, staging, and spectacle.
Vatel is very sensitive to this activity. He oversees the kitchens, recruits the kitchen boys, and dismisses the bad servants. He is very interested in the preparation of dishes.
He is not a cook, but I would say he is the one who carries the cuisine. He is the one who shines a light on gastronomy.
On August 17, 1661, Nicolas Fouquet is at the height of his glory. His Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte is completed, and he wants to host the entire court to finally cement his prestige.
What is it about? It's about throwing the most grandiose party ever held in the gentle kingdom of France. He wants to impress Louis XIV.
Between 200 and 600 distinguished guests are expected. It is François Vatel who is in charge of organising the entire banquet and all the events that will take place at that time.
Vatel is seasoned in the task, but tonight he knows he is taking a big risk and cannot make a mistake. A true challenge when one knows the complexity of the culinary arts at that time.
The 17th century, in terms of gastronomy, is very codified. We see it first in small details. For example, the guests have their own place setting reserved for them. Fork, knife, napkin.
And that's where the French service appears, which is done in 5 or 7 courses in an almost unchanging order. At the beginning of the meal, we have the soup courses. We have a course dedicated to roves, so the roasted meats. And then we have courses of sweet dishes, of desserts. So it's an extravagance of flavours, but also follows a sense of aesthetics. The dishes must delight the eye before delighting the stomach, if I may say so.
After weeks of rehearsals, on August 17, 1661, the anxious butler kicks off the festivities. It is around 6 o'clock when the young Louis XIV, aged 23, arrives at Vaux-le-Vicomte, alongside his mother, Anne of Austria. Queen Marie-Thérèse, who is pregnant, prefers to stay in Fontainebleau, but the king finds comfort in the arms of his young mistress, Mademoiselle de la Vallière.
Vatel planned tables inside the chateau, but also outside. One can imagine tables resplendent with silverware, with candelabras, with centerpieces perhaps made of spun sugar, as was loved in the 17th century. Then, the royal family wandered through the garden. Snacks are offered, music is listened to.
It's 24 violins that perform pieces by Monsieur de Lully. And then they bring in the theatre star, Molière, of course. And Molière presents Les Fâcheux, which is a new creation.
And then it is already very late. The court attends a first pyrotechnic show. It is absolutely marvelous. Small lights are lit at the windows of the castle, and then a firework explodes.
Everything is done to seduce, to captivate, to make one dream. The spectacle is everywhere.
At this moment in the evening, Vatel is confident, and everything seems to be going as planned. But even before the end of the festivities, the guest of honor turns everything upside down.
It seems that Louis XIV takes quite poorly the way he is received by Fouquet. Louis XIV does not like to be overwhelmed. At least not in that manner. He is received too well.
Louis XIV is shocked. While he himself is forced to make a number of economies, he sees that the one who is supposed to be his main servant spends money like no one else and gives the most sumptuous, or rather, the most extravagant of all parties. This is not possible for Louis XIV.
Fouquet sees nothing. Fouquet is convinced that everything is an incredible success and that his favor has reached its peak. And after a certain time, Louis XIV declares that he's leaving and returning to Fontainebleau. Fouquet is completely astonished. What is happening? But he will quickly find out. Less than 1 month after the party, a dramatic event occurs that will shake the French court. Fouquet is arrested in Nantes by D'Artagnan.
Louis XIV deliberately moved the court to Nantes, far from all possible supporters or support for Nicolas Fouquet. And Nicolas Fouquet is arrested in the courtyard of the Palace of Nantes.
He is ultimately accused of stealing money from the state coffers, since at that time private and public finances were mixed. It is believed that Nicolas Fouquet is taking advantage of public funds, public taxes for his own expenses, particularly for those famous expenses of Vaux-le-Vicomte.
That was the beginning of a very long trial, during which he remarkably defended himself. And then this trial theoretically lead to a sentence of exile that Louis XIV commutes, a very rare occurrence in the history of France. The king aggravates a sentence by the power to pardon instead of reducing it. He commutes it to life imprisonment. Fouquet is sent to the fortress of Pignerol.
For his part, François Vatel stayed at Vaux-le-Vicomte. But the news of his master's imprisonment does not bode well.
Vatel has several options available to him. Either unwavering loyalty, which means supporting him during his trial, showing that his master is innocent, or running away, distancing himself from the court, and hoping nothing will come back to haunt him. Well, Vatel chooses the second option.
Vatel thought that if they arrested Fouquet, they might arrest him too, and above all, they would demand explanations from him. He was so involved in all his affairs, he was his trusted man, and he got scared. What is certain is that he quickly crossed the English Channel and went to take refuge in England.
He exiles himself to London, where he lies low, far from France, Louis XIV and the court.
A London exile that not lasts forever. François Vatel, the exceptional maître d'hôtel, has not yet finished with his destiny. April 1671, Château de Chantilly. It has now been 4 years since François Vatel has served as the general chef.
When Vatel returns from England and enters the service of the Grand Condé in 1667, it is a true return to favor. The Grand Condé is the first prince of the blood after the king, and after the king's brother, he is the main figure of the state, the putative heir to the throne. And so for Vatel, it is the peak of his career in a way which will wash away the dishonor he experienced during the fall of Fouquet.
At Chantilly, Condé organizes a court life as brilliant as at Versailles, inviting all the great artists of his time, like Molière, Racine, and La Fontaine. He also has André Le Nôtre design sumptuous French-style gardens. Backstage, Vatel rules over more than a dozen people, all serving the prince.
He was in charge of the entire organization of this household, whether it is provisioning, the kitchens, the festivities, the silverware, the inventory of all the goods and possessions of the Grand Condé. For Condé, who wanted to be the greatest among the greatest, having Vatel with him is the assurance of organizing the most beautiful parties in the kingdom, perfectly orchestrated, perfectly timed.
The collections of the Condé Museum, located in the heart of the Château de Chantilly, preserve some moving testimonies of Vatel's presence more than 350 years ago.
This is a very rare archival document, one of the only ones signed by François Vatel himself. It is a memorandum, that is to say, an order form, an invoice that summarizes a very specific order of silverware for the Grand Condé. We are in 1668, and it amounts to 1,038 livres, so a rather considerable sum for cutlery, for plates intended for the prince. And at the end of this document, you have this very interesting inscription: "We, the undersigned stewards and maîtres d'hôtel of the household of His Serene Highness, Monseigneur the Prince," signed Vatel with a W because Vatel is Picard, and thus spells his name that way. So, this tableware, what is it? We have very rare examples here, including a four-pronged fork, typical of the 17th century, with the Condé coat of arms. They were arranged like this on the table so that the coat of arms could be seen, and this fork was found in the moats of the Château de Chantilly, so it's typically the kind of object that Vatel ordered for the prince's service.
For Vatel, working at that time for the Prince of Condé is not without risk. Louis XIV indeed holds a bitter memory of the one who, 20 years earlier, did not hesitate to betray him by participating in the Fronde of the Princes, aiming to destabilize the king and his all-powerful monarchy.
Condé, in those years 1660, needs to regain popularity. He is a former rebel. He had become one of the greatest rebels of the kingdom. He even went into the service of Spain against the Sun King.
There is this famous scene where Louis XIV welcomes the great Condé and forgives his betrayal. But deep in his mind, Louis XIV will be wary of Condé for the rest of his life, and even after the reconciliation, it will never be the same as before.
Condé has no choice. If he wants to fully regain royal favor, he must seal his reconciliation with the king definitively. He then chooses to play his trump card.
In 1671, the great Condé decides to invite Louis XIV for a grand banquet in his honour. The festivities are to last 3 days, and who better than Vatel to organise such an event?
It is both a marvellous excitement, a kind of way for Vatel to take his revenge on 1661, to show what he is capable of, and at the same time, what a terrible burden.
When Vatel worked for Fouquet, he was under a certain amount of pressure. But now, the pressure is even greater. It is more than just his master's honour at stake. It is the reintegration of the great Condé into the court of Versailles.
Vatel knows that he is risking his head, in a way. And here, the time allowed, as always with the greats, is minimal. 12 days. 12 days for it to be entered in the royal calendar. Vatel accepts. How can you say no to Monsieur le Prince? How can you say no? Impossible. The unfortunate man did not sleep for 12 days.
Everything must be organized, both the supply, the purchases, the foodstuffs. Extra staff must be hired, but also manage the stables and manage the accommodations. It is said that the smallest cupboard, the smallest closet, was turned into a courtier's room.
After 12 days of exhausting preparations, the festivities can finally begin. On Thursday, April 23rd, in the late afternoon, nearly 4,000 guests, including the king, his court, and other invitees, arrive at the Château de Chantilly.
While Vatel's team finishes setting the tables, the king and the court are sent to hunt in the Chantilly estate. And finally, at the end of the hunt, people enter the banquet hall and it's dazzling. It's magnificent.
We are in the Gallery of Battles at the Château de Chantilly, a gallery that was arranged by the Grand Condé and his architect Jules Ardouin-Mansart. This is where the supper was notably served for Louis XIV and his court, so we can imagine here a few dozen tables, notably the king's, perhaps in the center, near the fireplace, which is the place of honor. So, these are extraordinary tables set in 4 courses, even 6 courses. You have to imagine a perfectly choreographed ballet, and so the servants come in from both sides to serve these dishes under cloches, under silver cloches, and lift them all at the same time. You can imagine François Vatel not far from here. He must ensure that nothing is missing.
But from the start of the festivities, nothing seems to go as planned.
Vatel realises there are more guests than he had planned for. There are about 75 extra people, which means 2 more tables need to be set, except everything is calculated to the millimetre. So it's an absolute disaster, because there will be a shortage of roast, a shortage of roasted meat.
He confides his anxieties to Gourville, and Gourville amuses himself by saying, "Dear friend, please calm down. Everything is fine. We'll sort it out." So obviously, we sort it out. And we sort it out so well that no one notices anything.
But for him, it's a tragedy. We must not forget that he is a man on edge, and the slightest thing that doesn't go as he wishes drives him completely mad.
Here, we truly see a man on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And unfortunately, it won't stop there.
Vatel is losing his footing. To his friend Gourville, he whispers these few words. "Sir, I will not survive this affront. I have honour and reputation to lose." Words that indeed foreshadow a tragedy.
It is Friday, the 24th of April, 1679, and it is a day full of dangers.
On Friday, fish must be served. Now, fish for 4,000 people has to be brought from the sea. That's what we call the catch.
Vatel ordered fish from all the ports in the north of the kingdom. So Dieppe, Boulogne, and all those ports on the English Channel.
April 24th. Obviously, Vatel did not sleep a wink all night, as you can imagine. By 3 in the morning he is there. He has the gates at the back of the Chantilly Park opened wide to receive the freshest fish, shellfish, oysters. In short, everything one can imagine on a grand buffet like that.
4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and the catch does not arrive. You have to imagine Vatel going crazy, waiting for his fish, and nothing comes.
They start sending messengers a bit further down the road to find out what's happening.
In reality, on Wednesday and Thursday, there were storms, and the fishermen are late when they arrive at the port with the tide. Finally, dawn is just beginning to break. At last, we hear the sound of a cart.
Vatel rushes like a madman.
Obviously, everyone is ready in the kitchens. They've heated the stoves. Everything is ready.
And there, what does he see? An unfortunate guy? A little cart.
2 fish carts while he was expecting dozens and dozens.
2 baskets of fish. 2 baskets of fish to feed 4,000 people. It's utterly ridiculous. He can't even serve 1 table with that.
He asks the supplier, "But is that all?" And the supplier says to him, "Yes, sir, that's all."
It's a disaster.
One must imagine what Francois Vatel's reaction must have been at that moment. He was risking his honour, and almost beyond his honour. He was risking his life in this matter. The reputation of the Prince of Condé, with all that it implies, was at stake. Now, this reputation rested entirely on his shoulders.
Seized with dizziness and trembling, the words of his friend Gourville are not enough to calm him. With a vacant look and a pale complexion, Vatel returns to his quarters.
So, we enter an attic that existed in Vatel's time. It is in this kind of place that Vatel temporarily set up his quarters, and it is here that on the morning of April 24th, 1679, at 8 o'clock, Vatel comes to find refuge. Çakır sever, Turkey.
You really have to put yourself in Vatel's shoes. He doesn't sleep. He hasn't slept for 12 days.
He's crazy. He's exhausted. He's on edge. Everything is killing him. He's bleeding inside.
I think he is beyond despair. This man who has staked everything on his professional success, he is known to have no wife, no mistress, no lover, nothing. He has dedicated his life to his work. He has dedicated his life to his art, in a way. If you take that away from him, you take away his life.
Like a condemned man, Vatel has a final meal brought to him. He takes his time. He is the only one who knows that in a few minutes, it will all be over. He who served the greatest, who led hundreds of men and women with an iron hand, seems to be just a shadow of himself. Suddenly, while in the castle's basement, the kitchens are bustling with activity, Vatel prepares to commit the irreparable.
He wedged his sword against the door frame. And he runs it through his body once, twice. And then at the third team, he collapses, drowned in his blood. The great Vatel is dead.
A tragic death at only 40 years old, accompanied that day by a terrible twist of fate.
At the moment this man collapses, the carts full of baskets of fish, a sort of miraculous catch, start arriving one after the other, and Gourville certainly has a kind of dreadful premonition. He literally rushes into his friend's apartment, and there, an abominable sight, Vatel lies dead in a pool of blood. Gourville understands that he was not up to, if I may say, his friend's anxiety. He did not find the words to calm him.
At the time, to serve really meant something, and the one he served was the Prince of Condé. He said to himself, "If I ridicule my master, then it would be better to disappear from the face of this earth."
(1791) in the Montparnasse district in Paris. Little Antonin, 8 years old, walks slowly beside his father, his face sad and his hand clinging to his. This morning, the little boy's father is enjoying every moment spent with his son and does not hesitate to share a moment of closeness with him, because he has just made a very important decision, probably the most difficult of his life. and it's a decision that will change Antonin's life forever.
Antonin Carême was born in 1783 in Paris on Rue du Bac, in a sort of construction shed, since the father is a laborer of a very, very simple condition, almost miserable. The family already has 14 children.
Carême lost his mother very, very early, and the father is a bit overwhelmed, actually completely out of his depth with the situation.
There is this moment that is hard to talk about without being moved, when his father gives him 3 miserable coins, small bronze coins he managed to save. He puts them in his son's hand and says, "Go on, the vast world is yours."
His father said to him, "Listen, we are poor. You are smart, you are quick, you really have something different. Go ahead, my boy. Leave us. Go for it."
He is put outside. He is put out of the family home, abandoned by his father.
As his father walks away, Antonin sits down to collect his thoughts. He is dazed, and soon fear overwhelms him. Antonin's father, consumed by grief, barely dares to turn around. He suddenly disappears in the blink of an eye in the middle of the Parisian crowd.
Dad, where are you?
The young boy calls out to him in vain one last time before deciding to ask for help from the crowd, which, in a hurry, does not respond to him. From now on, for Antonin, nothing will ever be the same again.
Being abandoned at such a young age was an extremely important factor for Carême. It would shape his character, and then also give him the desire for social revenge, that he will have the desire to climb as high as possible socially through work, and ultimately to put an end to this painful past.
After a few days of wandering, little Antonin, indeed, does not let himself be discouraged. He is quickly hired by a Parisian inn in exchange for room and board.
He is taken in, at that moment, by a tavern keeper, and the very modest place is called the Rabbit Stew, which says it all. But he learns. He learns to handle a pan without burning himself. He learns about the ingredients. He learns to combine them. And above all, he is already brimming with intelligence. It's incredible how this little boy, very small, very thin, is already incredibly gifted.
He was shown how to make a sauce, and the next day he made it better by inventing new things. And very quickly, it can be said that Antonin Carême is the centerpiece of the small inn in question.
In the inn's kitchens, Antonin thus discovers a passion and envisions a career. Very quickly, his ambitions rise, and at just 16 years old, he leaves the inn to try to work for the pastry chef Sylvain Belly, one of the best establishments in Paris, located near the Palais Royal.
During this period of the Directory, Sylvain Bailly reigns, I would say, over sweets. He is a pastry chef and a man who has already invented the tea room, meaning he has a display window, and in the window they put cakes.
Carême is already completely captivated by the beauty of Bailey's storefront, which he regularly passes by. It's there that he realises it's something he likes, that fascinates him, and so he asks to work for Boily Boily, takes him on a trial basis.
At the master pastry chefs, Antonin's talents are confirmed. His skills and touch are quickly noticed, to the point that in 1 month, he is appointed as viennoiserie chef in charge of making puff pastry.
Viennoiserie chef. It's working the dough with a rolling pin and folding and refolding this dough until it obviously creates an absolutely extraordinary layering.
Antonin Carême simply perfected puff pastry to the point of making it perfect. So much so that Antonin Carême's recipe is still the one used by pastry chefs worldwide. And it is to Antonin Carême that we owe it.
At Bailly's, Carême doesn't count his hours, but in addition to perfecting his pastry techniques, Antonin wants to make up for his shortcomings related to his social condition.
He has no school level at all. He is not a child who went to school. He experienced those moments of survival need, everything he can take to educate himself, to grow, to climb the social ladder. He will seek it out.
He has an unquenchable thirst for learning. Everything for him must be learning. Everything for him must be knowledge.
What attracts him above all is a culture that may surprise, because in fact, it's architecture. He is passionate about architecture.
Carême always dreamed of being an architect, but obviously he didn't have the means, neither financial nor cultural. There you have it. He is a self-taught child, and he appears in the most urgent way pastry was obviously a way to make a living.
The peculiarity of the Bay House is that it is located on Vivian Street, and Vivian Street is very close to the library. At the time, it was called the Nation's Library, since it's the middle of the Revolution.
The young apprentice Carême asked his boss to be absent roughly once a week, not all day, to go learn at the library.
He does not master writing and reading very well, so he is more attracted to what can be seen. And he spends time at the print cabinet, at the engraving cabinet, where he admires the plans of the great architectural treatises from Greco-Roman antiquity and the Renaissance.
In the evening, young Antonin spends hours reproducing sketches of the buildings he saw at the library. Soon, this gives him an idea.
What is taking shape in his mind is to create monumental works. Works never seen before, unprecedented, which will actually be edible architectures, sweet architectures.
He truly sees a similarity between what can be built in stone and what can be built in the kitchen with food. And he is literally going to invent the pièce montée.
Carême's love for architecture lead him to invent completely extravagant constructions, which he makes with food decorations made of a mixture of sugar and egg white that holds together. And we still have a number of Carême's drawings that show a certain virtuosity in the design and depict these culinary, sugary constructions, pyramids, temples. It's absolutely extraordinary.
Techniques developed by Carême that are still used today by the greatest pastry chefs in our country.
Here is a cake in the style of Antonin Carême's cakes. This entire cake is made of sugar, with sugar flowers, windows, arches, balustrades. And there you have it. It's mainly a showpiece that creates a grand effect when the cake arrives at the reception table. Creating a piece like this, from start to finish, takes about 3 weeks. The different stages of production always start with a drawing. In any case, it's the drawing that allows us to set the proportions and make all the works, all the molds that are necessary before preparing the cakes. So typically, a column like this, we will make one, create a mold, and then repeat, molding this column several times to create the same column around. And the same for each architectural element. There you go. Once I have my column demolded, I will attach it to my piece. So, since I made my drawing beforehand, I am sure that the column will fit perfectly at the height intended for it. Antonin Carême's techniques haven't really changed. The basics remain the same. So today, we are also the keepers of expertise, and it's our role to keep it alive. It is truly Antonin Carême who paved the way in our profession for all these exceptional pieces and made pastry an art in its own right today.
At only 18 years old, with his extraordinary cakes, Antonin Carême gives a boost to the pastry of the time. Creations that immediately please Sylvain Bailly.
Bailly is quickly captivated by Carême's inventiveness, by his concern for beauty, and indeed, he will obviously use it to attract clients and bring them to him.
They put these cakes in the display window at Bailey's, and now you have dozens of Parisians who come specifically to see Mr. Carême's architectures.
He manages to create temples that are 1.5 meters wide, placed in the display window, which truly captivates customers who have never seen anything like it.
In the sophisticated circles of the capital, people are talking about this Carême, and the most prominent figures of the state will soon want to present meringue temples signed by Carême on their own tables.
Talleyrand is a very ambitious character, a political strategist, but also a man who handles the fork a lot. A lover of good food, very interested in gastronomy.
For the grand evenings he hosts, Talleyrand often calls upon the caterer, Bailly. And Bailly brings with him, of course, his best people. And the very best is the famous Carême, the one who makes temples out of meringue and nougatine.
And there, it's love at first sight. Between Talleyrand and Carême, the connection, if I may say, happens instantly.
Carême enters the service of Talleyrand while he occupies the Hôtel Gallifet, which was at that time the embassy of the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
As early as 1803, Carême is 19, almost 20. Talleyrand orders from Carême very beautiful centerpieces, croquembouches for the ministerial table. And that, obviously, you can imagine, if we remember where he comes from, he is obviously completely captivated by this first challenge.
At Talleyrand's, Antonin Carême's career gradually transforms.
Carême is in contact not only with other pastry chefs, but with cooks who are great chefs of the time. And with them, he discovers something else, not just the art of pastry, but the art of cooking.
Carême takes on another dimension there. He realizes that it's not just the world of pastry, that the world of cooking is just as vast, if not much larger.
A world he was able to explore a little more. At the end of the year 1803, Talleyrand acquires the sublime Château de Valençay, located in the Loire Valley, which he has decided to make a culinary temple. But before entrusting Carême with the reins of his kitchen, he decides to challenge him.
He asks him, which is still a difficult challenge to undertake, to design a menu for each day of the year.
The idea being that in 365 days, one should not eat the same thing twice, which is obviously a feat of inventiveness, an extraordinary technical feat. And Carême takes on the challenge.
As he had excelled in pastry, Antonin proves to be an outstanding cook. He introduces simple and refined food and quickly develops his own unique vision of cuisine.
Carême really implements what will resemble our modern gastronomy. He creates a break from the cuisine as it was practiced by his predecessors, notably in Vatel's time, and he abandons all the very fatty, saucy dishes, everything that simmers for a long time.
Antonin Carême is the first to realize that the product itself must have a true expression. The product has taste, has an identity. He realizes that the way of presenting must also be changed. He thinks differently so that there is more elegance. That is perhaps the word that characterizes him the most. He will bring elegance to our profession as cooks.
Elegant recipes created at that time that have gone down in history. His famous vol au vent is still on the menu of the finest restaurants in the capital today, like at Taillevent, where the Italian chef Giuliano Sperandio keeps the recipe alive more than 200 years after its invention.
The vol au vent is simply a puff pastry in which various ingredients can be placed. Shells with rooster kidneys, with sweetbreads, and with poultry quenelles. And in addition, there will be green olives and button mushrooms. These are the basics of the vol au vent. All these bases will be bound with a supreme sauce. It's exactly the same base as a bechamel.
Why the name vol au vent? Because, according to the legend, the first time that Carême baked his pastries and opened the oven, his puff pastry shells had risen so much that they seemed about to literally fly away.
The success of a vol au vent is the puff pastry. A successful puff pastry is 75% of the recipe for me. And here, we have a puff pastry that is almost perfect. Out of the oven, enjoy.
At Talleyrand's, Carême gives free rein to his creativity, and his dishes delight the most prominent figures in French and international politics. but his role will soon extend beyond the walls of his kitchens and take on considerable importance. We are in 1814. The French campaign, led by the Russians and their allies against the French Empire, ends with the defeat of Napoleon I dishonored. The emperor is forced to abdicate. The fate of France is thus at the mercy of the Austrians, the Prussians, the British, but also the Russians.
From the moment when, due to political events, the empire gradually collapses, the enemies of France land in Paris, and among them, the foremost is the Tsar of all the Russias.
When Alexander I arrives in Paris, he holds the future of the country in his hands, and Talleyrand, to charm him and have him somewhat under his influence, one might say, claims that the Élysée Palace is mined and that he must therefore come live with him on Rue Saint-Florentin.
Talleyrand said to him, "You know, sire, my hotel on Rue Saint-Florentin is entirely open to your Imperial Majesty. You will be much safer there. Come to my place." Alexander said, "Why not?"
It is actually a stratagem, because the minister, known for being a shrewd strategist, has an idea in mind.
Talleyrand has a secret weapon. Well, not just one, but still a weapon that played a big part in the success of the evenings, organised by Talleyrand. It's Antonin Carême, of course.
Talleyrand hopes to win over the Russian sovereign by inviting him to his table, where he asks Carême to dazzle him. But before letting his guest taste the delights of his magician chef, Talleyrand installs the Tsar and all his staff on the first floor of his sumptuous private mansion in the heart of Paris.
We enter here into the grand bedroom or state bedroom of Talleyrand, where Tsar Alexander I stayed, starting from March 31st, 1814. Talleyrand does not skimp on luxury. He provides the Tsar with the most beautiful floor of the mansion, the one where the salons are the most beautiful. Talleyrand acquires this private mansion on Rue Saint-Florentin in 1813, and he lived there until 1838, as it is here that he passes away. So, it is an absolutely extraordinary place. The location is magnificent, the place is sumptuous, and it became a political and diplomatic tool of primary importance. Here, we are in the audience chamber, where a number of discussions and political negotiations are already taking place. And then here, we enter the dining room, which in Talleyrand's time played a role just as important diplomatically as the audience chamber. This is where everything will be decided in April 1814, in these informal but very, very valuable discussions. You have to imagine, a ceremonial table with a magnificent tablecloth, an extraordinary crystal set, equally beautiful tableware, around which are absolutely prestigious guests, dignitaries of the empire, diplomats, ministers, sovereigns. Talleyrand, of course, the Tsar, and then behind the scenes, the chef Antonin Carême.
In these moments of great tension, when he knows that the Tsar can help France recover, Carême outdoes himself.
Carême is very clever, and he understands that a meal is an art of seducing the guests, especially when they are foreigners. So Carême serves meals that the Tsar appreciates, notably oysters, since the Tsar is very fond of them.
He was also keen to please the Tsar by consistently serving a Russian-style soup, inspired by or from Russia.
And then there was all the artistic talent of the presentation with small bouquets of fresh herbs inside. People had never seen that. It's like a dinner show centered around the cuisine. Through this dish, they showcase all the power and strength of a French state that, at that time, is quite weak.
Carême displays all his talent, and the most amazing thing is that it works.
Alexander I congratulates Carême several times. He is extremely dazzled by the cuisine he is served.
The Tsar of Russia expressed it by saying that until then we did not know how to eat, and that we learned it with Talleyrand and his cook Carême.
In fact, they managed to put the Tsar in a very good mood. There is a very nice phrase from Carême who said, "Gastronomy serves as an escort to diplomacy." And indeed, one can say that this was the case in the spring of 1814.
No doubt softened by Carême's prowess, the Tsar indeed shows clemency during the signing of the Treaty of Paris on May 30th, 1814. France regains its borders of 1792 and saves face. This treaty is a prelude to the famous Congress of Vienna, which opens a few months later, during which the victors of Napoleon I meet to redraw the map of Europe.
Needless to say, all the members of the Congress of Vienna are against France. They fully intend to make France pay for what it made them endure.
And it is Talleyrand who has the heavy responsibility of representing French diplomacy at the king's request.
Louis XVIII asks him if he needs 2 or 3 additional embassy secretaries. But Talleyrand replies that he doesn't need that, just 2 or 3 kitchen boys, to signify in a way that French diplomacy will be conducted in the kitchens.
If Talleyrand surrounds himself with cooks, it is because he hopes to reproduce in Vienna the strategy that worked so well with the Tsar. Carême is held in Paris by other commitments, but his presence is certainly felt at the Congress.
The French delegation applied his techniques, his recipes, his table manners at the French table. And it is precisely the genius of Carême that dazzles the guests. There is the famous vol au vent, but also a typically autumnal soup made with chestnuts, celery, and wild mushrooms. And it is this soup that truly captivated the guests around the French table.
One can truly speak of culinary diplomacy, that is to say, genuinely bringing together the pleasure of the table and, of course, the eminently subtle intricacies of diplomacy.
After months of negotiations and memorable dinners, the Congress of Vienna concludes in June 1815. It sets the borders of Europe, and France, against all odds, retains a place on the political chessboard.
One cannot imagine what the Kingdom of France might have become without the intervention of Talleyrand and Antonin Carême.
In 1816, Carême receives an absolutely splendid offer from the Regent of England, the future George IV, who was a great lover of cuisine, even a glutton.
So we'll have one of the most extraordinary buildings in Europe constructed in Brighton. And I believe that the splendour of the Brighton Pavilion must have matched quite well with the splendour of the tables that Monsieur Carême used to create.
Located in the very trendy seaside resort of Brighton, the residence has belonged to the Prince Regent since 1803. He enjoys staying there and organizing grand parties away from the London court. Initially, he had a neoclassical pavilion built, but he quickly decided to give free rein to his creativity.
In 1815, the Prince Regent hires John Nash, the star architect of the time, known for being an architect who could create whimsical constructions. And that's what he did here. John Nash did not destroy the building. It is still there, but he completely transformed the neoclassical style into a monument that looks a bit like a cake. The most astonishing elements are its onion-shaped domes. And the one in the middle is truly incredible. John Nash built it using a huge cast iron structure, similar to a birdcage that was placed around the existing building. Add to that the minarets, and you have a little piece of India on the south coast of England.
At the Regent's request, the architect also equips the building with a music room and a kitchen, which thus becomes, in 1817, Carême's new playground. Contrary to the customs of the time and despite the risk of fire, it is attached to the banquet room, because the Regent does not want to wait or eat cold. Upon his arrival, the French chef, aged 34, is amazed by the beauty of this state-of-the-art kitchen.
It's a large kitchen on the ground floor with good ventilation, plenty of light, and a lot of space. It's also a very modern kitchen. Here, we have a fabulous example of a smokehouse. This smokehouse allowed for spit roasting and operated on its own, before electricity, of course. It's a complex system of ventilation and heating. And here, you could easily cook 25 to 30 chickens at the same time. On this side, we have a huge cast iron stove, using wood and coal to prepare food. I think Carême was very impressed by all this equipment. We are now entering the fabulous banquet hall of the Royal Pavilion. It was entirely designed to impress the guests. The most incredible dinner that Carême prepared here took place in January 1817. For this dinner, Carême prepared 8 kinds of soups, 36 entrees, followed by 32 desserts. It was worthy of a work of art. The Prince Regent must have been very sad when Carême decided to leave after less than a year.
Despite the golden bridge offered to him by the regent, Antonin Carême is homesick and decides to return to Paris. Upon his return, his status has reached another level.
So when you are the cook of the King of England, you are the cook everyone would want.
Carême is expensive and rare. So, having Carême in your kitchen shows that you can afford the best chef in all of Europe. Naturally, he becomes an object that the aristocracy will vie for.
He's the rock star of the time, you know. Everyone wants him because they say he'll give our guests exceptional experiences.
For all his contemporaries, Carême is truly the chef of kings and the king of chefs.
Carême made a name for himself. He now wants to create an image, and he needs an outfit to stand out. In 1821, he permanently entered history by creating an accessory that, even today, is inseparable from the figure of the chef.
Until then, in kitchens, people used to wear types of caps that looked a bit like nightcaps. You know, they were small white cotton caps that flopped to the side. No, he wanted something more grandiose. He wanted the chef to have a hat that matched his reputation.
It is at that moment that he invents the toque and thus raises it by a few centimetres with this vertical part at the base of the hat.
It's a hat that rises, so there are obviously the architectural connotations that fascinated Carême.
So, it doesn't yet have the stratospheric heights that we might see later, but we are all ready, and that's what's important, in the symbolism.
It's a way for a chef artist, the first chef artist in the history of the world, to say, I am an artist and I partake in art, including in my attire.
Over the years, Carême's success remains undiminished, and his reputation leads him to travel from royal kitchens to castles, serving personalities such as Emperor Francis I of Austria, Lord Stuart, the British ambassador to the Austrian court, and Princess Bagration. In 1826, he even enters the service of the powerful German banker James Mayer de Rothschild. Carême puts his heart into his work but exhausts himself.
He invested himself so much in his profession that this man slowly dies from it. He is not 50 years old, so fundamentally, he is a man who sacrifices himself and knows it.
Several hypotheses have been formulated, but the most probable hypothesis is that he died from a dental infection due to the fact that he tasted a lot of the dishes he prepared. So it is likely a dental infection that spread. At the time, there were no antibiotics, and unfortunately, it took his life. Antonin Carême dies prematurely in January 1833 at the age of 49. Nearly 200 years later, his story continues to fascinate, and his legacy remains immense.
There is all this strength of work, curiosity, and social advancement. It commands respect, so he is a model.
'Tis possible that even today, the prestige enjoyed by our great chefs on all continents owes something to the stature of Antonin Carême.
Paris, 1875. The great tragedian Sarah Bernhardt performs on stage. The one nicknamed the Divine fills the house, as usual. Backstage, an admirer is pacing in the artist's dressing room, eager to meet the one he admires, and holding a rather special gift in his hands. It is Auguste Escoffier, the greatest chef of the late 19th century. And that evening, he is keen to present to Sarah Bernhardt the dessert he has just created for her, which will henceforth bear her name.
He knows her love for food, and he knows she enjoys eating and drinking well. Sarah Bernhardt is a bon vivant in a way, and he knows her tastes.
He knows that Sarah Bernhardt likes fresh strawberries, barely marinated, just coated with sugar, etc. He will do that because he feels like he's getting a little into the person's intimacy.
You have to imagine Sarah Bernhardt grabbing her spoon and melting with pleasure. It's a truly delightful declaration of love. She is obviously extremely sensitive to it. And he will say to her, "Madam, if you allow me, these are now called phrases Sarah Bernhardt."
Imagine we're making a recipe for you, a kind of showcase of who you are, so we'll think of you even in posterity. It's still exceptional.
If Auguste Escoffier has access to the greatest artists of the time, it's because he is also one of the influential figures of his era. The one who excels and invents French gastronomy has climbed all the ranks since October 28, 1846, the day of his birth in Provence, in a small village west of Nice.
So we are here in the village of Villeneuve-Loubet, where Auguste Escoffier was born. In this house, which today is the Escoffier Museum of Culinary Art. This village looked a lot like it does now, as it was a village perched on a hill and topped by the castle of the Marquis de Pagny-Passy. And it was a village mainly with farmers, a few blacksmiths like Auguste's family. His father was the village blacksmith. So here we are in an important room of Auguste Escoffier's house, because it is here that at 10 years old he watches his mother cook, and especially his grandmother, whom he mentions in his memories, preparing coffee for the village ladies. And one day he tries to imitate his grandmother by making coffee again. His grandmother catches him. She may have scolded him a little, but she mostly encouraged him by saying, "You will be a great chef one day." And that's indeed what he became.
But at that time, the young boy's dreams are elsewhere, and it is the Beaux Arts school that this artisan's son wishes to enter.
Auguste has a passion, it's sculpture, and he says to his dad, "I want to become a sculptor." Auguste is 12 years, 13 years old, and his father says to him, "That's not a job, you will be apprenticed to your uncle at the French restaurant in Nice."
So he follows the family's orders to be apprenticed with this uncle. But he quickly develops a taste for cooking, and quite rapidly.
They realize that he has a touch, that he has sensitivity, that he has a beautiful vision of things despite his young age.
And he has absolute admiration. For whom? Well, for Carême, it's not about matching him, it's about surpassing him, being better than him. And if he needs to work more, well, he will work more, so he can become excellent.
At 19 years old, Auguste has nothing left to learn from his uncle. He is already thinking of elsewhere. In 1865, he leaves his native Provence for the capital. Then at the height of the Second Empire, that of Napoleon III and Empress Eugénie.
It is the extraordinary moment when this country, France at the height of its power, indulges itself, has fun, and it's a whirlwind of crinolines and fluttering fans. It's the imperial celebration. Auguste arrives, wide-eyed, in this Paris.
It's the capital of all possibilities. And there, it's a chance to be where truly every talented person must be, Paris.
Paris is magical, and Auguste Escoffier realizes that Paris is the most beautiful gastronomic capital in the world.
There are Les Halles, which at that time are in full creation. Products from all over the world arrive in this era of Paris, which is in a way the pantry of the greatest chefs of the time.
So everything that is the best of the best is within reach. It is obvious that Auguste Escoffier, with his talent, his genius one might say, only has to help himself. It's easy.
It is also the time when restaurants, new places for social outings, are multiplying. Barely arrived, Auguste finds a position as a clerk in one of the most prominent establishments in the capital.
The Petit Moulin Rouge is already a trendy restaurant in Paris, which is not at all in Montmartre, but actually at the bottom of the Champs-Élysées.
And this Petit Moulin Rouge was very renowned at the time for its intimate gatherings, meaning that it wasn't just about cooking, but combining romantic encounters with gastronomic pleasure.
There are those famous private rooms where couples, not always legitimate to say the least, can meet in complete discretion.
So most of the women who frequent these establishments are, I would say, women of easy virtue. At the time, they are called the dishes of the day. That is to say, they sit at the bar and the gentlemen choose the person they wish to invite to their table, who will serve as their dish of the day.
But in the kitchen, it's a different story. Auguste discovers particularly grueling working conditions.
That's really the flip side. He ends up with a completely hysterical chef who does his job the old-fashioned way, meaning tough. So, there's yelling in a completely confined atmosphere. The windows are never opened because it's out of the question for the temperature to drop. They're thirsty, they drink. Actually, they don't drink, they booze.
And because people drink alcohol to quench their thirst, the arguments sometimes end with knives in hand, which he does not appreciate at all.
It's intense, but he hangs on, and we quickly understand that he is a prodigy in the kitchen. He becomes a sauce chef. He is 22 years old. They call him Mr. Escoffier.
Auguste forbids the use of alcohol and cigarettes because he doesn't want ashes to fall into the dishes. He doesn't want shouting in the kitchen. Moreover, he changes the word barker to announcer, because there's no need to bark the dish requested by the customer. It can simply be announced.
As a cook today, I have incredible respect for him. He completely changed our profession. He added humanity, organization, and respect.
At the Petit Moulin Rouge, Auguste asserts himself in the kitchen and also innovates in the dining room.
He has the brilliant idea to come and bow deeply to greet his customers.
He showcased himself, but he understood that highlighting his clientele would be even more important. And so that's when he started creating dishes and desserts for the personalities who came to him.
The most famous case, of course, is the peach melba. He named this dessert in honour of the very famous singer Nellie Melba. But we could multiply the examples like that.
For Cora Pearl, who is one of the most famous courtesans of the Second Empire, there is a little nod. He dedicates lamb noisettes to her. You see the allusion? So it becomes lamb noisettes. Cora.
Le Petit Moulin Rouge thus becomes the meeting place for many artists. It is at this time that Auguste Escoffier meets Sarah Bernhardt while she is triumphing in the play Ruy Blas by Victor Hugo. Adored by all, she is on the verge of becoming the greatest actress of the moment and also the most sought after.
Each appearance of Sarah Bernhardt is a true phenomenon. The whole restaurant is buzzing.
When he creates his Sarah Bernhardt strawberries, it's in tribute to the great actress. He knows that afterwards, the other ladies who come, and the gentlemen too, by the way, will want to taste the divine's favourite dessert. All of this is about image.
Sarah Bernhardt, she gets people talking about this chef, and this chef gets people talking about Sarah Bernhardt. A kind of exchange like that, It's a bit like the Instagram of the time. You have to be seen with this or that actress, and it will increase your notoriety.
This time, Auguste Escoffier's reputation is established. But in 1878, he decides to leave the Petit Moulin Rouge in Paris. He marries a woman named Delphine Daffis, and together, they move to Cannes to open their own restaurant, Le Faisan Doré. Auguste does not yet know that it is precisely on the French Riviera, in the south of France, that he will have one of the most important encounters of his life. A meeting that will take him to London, then to Paris, before he achieves international success. As summer of 1884 approached, two men met for the first time in the lobby of Monaco's Grand Hotel. Businessman César Ritz is looking for a partner to join him in his ventures. The hotelier wants to create very high-end establishments and offer the wealthiest a service that doesn't yet exist anywhere else. For this, he needs the best chef, and at that time, his name is Auguste Escoffier.
Great things begins when two complementary geniuses meet.
Together, they invent the very notion of a grand luxury hotel. César Ritz, of course, is only interested in people who have a lot of money. What do these people want? Luxury. So everything must be sumptuous.
César Ritz clearly understood that an exceptional cuisine was also essential, and he, in fact, collaborated with Escoffier. Escoffier would have him taste the dishes, and Ritz would offer his opinion.
The Ritz/Escoffier Association. It really is one of those bulldozers that sweep everything away in their path.
For 6 years, the formidable duo spends winters on the French Riviera and summers in Switzerland. And with every service, they create a sensation among a wealthy clientele who follow them. The two men become indispensable, but they will soon take the next step. In 1890, an English hotelier named Richard D'Oyley Carte, impressed by their success, offered them a challenge commensurate with their talent to take over the Savoy Hotel in London.
Just consider what the Savoy Hotel in London is like. It's on a truly dizzying scale. It's an establishment that's practically the size of a small town.
It's 500 meals served every single day, it's 80 chefs, it's dozens and dozens of staff members and personnel.
For Auguste, the challenge is truly colossal. If he wants to keep up with the demand, he must profoundly change the way work is organized in his kitchens. He then goes on to create the brigades.
In the past, a single chef was responsible for one dish. But now, there are 4 or 5, each specializing in a different part of the dish. This saves a lot of time. It's the division of labor.
Which sometimes makes me say he's a tailorist before tailor. He simply doesn't have the conveyor belt in his kitchen yet. But otherwise, the principle is the same.
With his brigades, Escoffier invented in London what still today governs all great restaurant kitchens worldwide. In France, in Auch, in the canton of Rouen, the kitchens of the Trois Gros restaurant, triple-starred for 55 years, still operate according to this model.
So it's organized hierarchically, which means you have the owner, the head chef, then a kitchen chef. Then you have 1, 2, or 3 second kitchen chefs, then senior chefs. Here, we have 4 senior chefs, responsible for a station in the kitchen: the fish, the meat, the larder, and the pastry. And then, each senior chef is responsible for cooks. It's truly a team effort, and though we have one of the most beautiful kitchens in the world, alone, here, I'd accomplish nothing. Everyone must work at the right speed, at the right pace. Everyone can see each other, there are no partitions, no walls, nothing. So, we've removed all obstacles to communication and exchange, making it very fluid and calm. Auguste Escoffier, he had to work hard to devise a system to save time and work more comfortably. It's admirable to see that at some point, a chef thought of this to advance our profession.
With such organization and the combined talents of César Ritz and Auguste Escoffier, the Savoy became, by the end of the 19th century, London's most popular hotel and restaurant.
Quite simply, because at that time, in London, there were no restaurants. People would entertain guests at home, and the Savoy became the place to be. That is to say, the place where everyone wanted to be.
There is essentially the London aristocracy, of course. And the most famous client is obviously the Prince of Wales.
Edward VII, though not yet known as such, comes to dinner. They're at a loss for how to please him. One evening, Escoffier decides to make crepes for him, flambéed with Grand Marnier. It's all very spectacular.
And Escoffier then proposes to christen these pancakes in honour of the Prince of Wales.
But the prince said, No, I don't deserve them. That was very clever of him, as he didn't want his name on a pancake after all. We'll give them the name of this young lady who is standing next to me. Her name is Suzette. That's the origin of crêpes Suzette.
But just as everything seemed to be going well for the two men, 7 years after their arrival, a scandal breaks out at the Savoy Hotel, forcing César Ritz and Auguste Escoffier to leave London precipitously.
It would appear that the two Frenchmen had defrauded the grand establishment, having notably embezzled spirits, and it caused such a scandal that the shareholders couldn't see how they could avoid dismissing Ritz and Escoffier.
At the same time, when they depart from London, there's already another fabulous project that truly inspires both of them. The Ritz, that immense hotel on Place Vendôme in Paris.
Their idea with the Ritz Hotel was that the hotel industry had reached such a high standard that now, what would truly make the difference, it wouldn't simply be about size and luxury, but the refinement found in every detail.
Every single detail is crafted for the pleasure of the senses, of sight and of smell. It's an infinitely subtle blend that we call high-end hospitality.
February 1898, and the Ritz Hotel is due to open in 4 months. César Ritz asks his wife, Marie-Louise, to finalize the last details and adjust the decorative elements. She advises on colors, materials, and fabric choices.
We are here in the Vendôme suite. Marie-Louise Ritz chose a decor she knows would suit the clients César and she were targeting, the aristocracy, the upper class. It's a combination of Louis XV, a bit of Louis XVI, and some Empire style too. We're now entering the bedroom, which is also typical of the Ritz's aristocratic French style. And beyond the beautiful furnishings, there's also the technological aspect. He had electricity installed on every floor, especially in all the bedrooms with electric bedside lamps, a true novelty for guest comfort dressing tables for female guests and private bathrooms for each room, featuring extremely luxurious details like golden swan-shaped faucets, a motif very fashionable at the court of Louis XV. This was ultimately the creation not just of outward luxury, but also of intimate luxury.
When it came to table settings, Escoffier wanted the same high level of quality. Consequently, the dinnerware was made of Limoges porcelain, and the crystal was signed by Baccarat. For the very first time, silver-plated dishes were used for table service. Following Escoffier's innovative idea, the Christophe silversmith house also created square dishes, which was yet another innovation.
You have before you a series of objects, cutlery, serving pieces, like these plates called mart, with flowers, with plant-like curves, royal blue and gold in honour of Saint Martha, the patron saint of innkeepers and hoteliers, to bring as much luck as possible to the hotel's opening. We also see various surprising objects, perhaps no longer existing today, but which ultimately show a sense of luxury and a taste for detail, like this asparagus server, a beautiful, solid silver piece with incredible craftsmanship. And also a more amusing and rarer object, which is an artichoke tongs to strip artichokes, and which is also a very beautiful object. Auguste Escoffier and César Ritz had one goal: to amaze and surprise the era's celebrities and keep them coming back to their hotel and restaurant.
On June 1st, 1898, the establishment welcomed its first guests. Escoffier was ready to serve 500 covers. Critics of the era then claimed that the Ritz was not a mere hotel for travelers, but rather the grand residence of a nobleman, located in the busiest yet quietest district of Paris.
Dining at the Ritz is an exceptional experience. It's an adventure where Auguste Escoffier leaves his personal signature, just as a poet or a painter would leave theirs. People come to the Ritz specifically to savor its exquisite cuisine. The Ritz, it is truly the ultimate address.
At 52, Escoffier was at the height of his craft. Galvanized, he opened many establishments worldwide, always with his partner. But César Ritz's health became fragile, and depression loomed. He died on October 26, 1918. Auguste Escoffier continues alone for a few years and gains perspective through writing.
He becomes an author. He writes not only his memoirs, but he also writes his absolutely essential culinary guide.
Imagine a work of 946 pages with over 5,000 recipes that even today, I'd almost say, form the very foundation of cooking. And not a single gourmet restaurant in the world lacks a copy of this Bible in its kitchens.
Everything is there. The sauces, the preparations, the jus, the meats, the cuts, it's all there. What I mean is, you have the very foundation of French culinary heritage condensed within these pages, and sooner or later, you'll always come back to Escoffier.
After 60 years of work, Auguste Escoffier is no longer just a chef. He's a living legend and a true ambassador of French expertise. That is why in 1919, the President of the French Republic, Raymond Poincaré, awarded him the prestigious Legion of Honor, thus becoming the very first chef to receive this distinction.
The Legion of Honor was still initially a military award. For the whole profession, it's an honor.
It is the recognition from the Republic, from the state, for this chef, I would say, for the services he has rendered, and for having successfully established French gastronomy on the international stage, securing its place at the very top. Let us recall that young boy, just 12 or 13 years old, who dreamed of becoming a sculptor and who, through sheer talent, genius, and above all, I must say, hard work and passion, would become the first truly renowned, world-famous chef of the 20th century. It was a dazzling journey,